Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing a breaking headline moment that has just shaken the foundation of professional women's basketball. For the first time in its entire history, the WNBA has reportedly turned a profit in 2025, triggering revenue-sharing payments to players for the very first time ever. This is not a drill. According to union leadership speaking to ESPN this Sunday morning, the league has notified player representatives that they have finally hit the financial benchmark required under the current collective bargaining agreement to activate profit sharing. 13 teams across the league will now receive a combined total of $8 million to distribute directly to their players. This marks an absolutely unprecedented moment for a league that has operated in the red since its founding nearly 3 decades ago. The announcement comes directly from the players' union itself, raising immediate questions about transparency, actual profit margins, and what this truly means for the future of women's professional basketball as negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement heat up right now. Let's watch this clip of ESPN, what they said.
They deserve their money. They deserve their cut.
For sure.
They've helped build this league into what it is. That's the one side. The other side is that the owners have been here too. And they're saying over a lengthy period of time, we've been losing money. We ain't trying to lose more. And that's where the lines are drawn in the sand. So what you have to ask yourself as ladies is, look at what you've built and look at all that's happening in the world of sports. Can you afford to jeopardize a season?
Yeah.
Because in the end, the owners who are not known, who are not in the public eye, who are not public faces for the league, they could sit back and say, hey, we got our money. We ain't trying to lose more. So it hurts the game and we can't make it, but we ain't trying to lose more anyway. You're ladies, you're trying to make this money and you're trying to build off the league. And my advice, and I've said this in the past, would be this. Continue to strive hard to get yours, be reasonable, understand where the lines are drawn in the sand and go from there. But a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
Whoever is the marketing, whether it's the Caitlin Clark, it's the Unesco's or anybody else, ride those waves unapologetically because ultimately it builds the popularity of the league and everyone will benefit in some capacity down the line. It can't always be about what you want in the immediate. You have to have a marathon's point of view as opposed to a sprinter.
Yeah.
But here is where this story gets complicated, controversial, and absolutely critical to understand. The numbers being released are coming from the players' union, not from league ownership, not from NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, and not from the WNBA itself. That raises a massive red flag for anyone paying attention. Why would the union be the entity breaking this news and not the league that supposedly just achieved this historic financial milestone? The WNBA has declined to comment on the payments. They have refused to confirm the profit figures. They will not provide specifics on how much revenue was actually generated or what the exact threshold was that triggered this revenue-sharing clause. The Women's National Basketball Players Association has also declined to provide bank statements or detailed breakdowns of the league's financials. So what we have here is a historic announcement wrapped in secrecy, ambiguity, and more questions than answers. Let's dig into what we actually know. Under the 2020 collective bargaining agreement, players are entitled to receive 50% of what is defined as shared revenue. But shared revenue is not total revenue. It is not gross income. Shared revenue is calculated as the amount of total revenue that exceeds a predetermined financial threshold, minus 30% for expenses. That means the league first has to cover all its operating costs, all its overhead, all its investments, and only after clearing a specific revenue benchmark do the players get a cut of what remains. According to the union, the players' portion of that shared revenue in 2025 amounted to approximately $16 million. Half of that, $8 million, will go directly to players who were active during the 2025 season. The other $8 million will be allocated to the league's marketing agreements, which fund off-season initiatives where select players are paid to promote the league and its corporate partners. Here is the problem with celebrating this as some kind of major victory. We have no idea what the actual profit margin was. What if the league only made $25 million in net profit? What if it was $50 million? For a professional sports league backed by the financial power of the NBA, subsidized for decades and now experiencing what many are calling a popularity explosion, is that really something to celebrate? Compare that to the profit margins of Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA itself, or even Major League Soccer. We are potentially talking about a fraction of what those leagues generate, and this is after nearly 30 years of losses. One profitable year does not erase decades of financial failure. It does not prove sustainability. It does not prove the business model works long-term. It proves that in one specific year, under one specific set of circumstances, the league finally broke even and then some. Let's talk about what likely drove this profit. The league expanded, new teams were added, expansion fees were paid, sponsorship deals surged, television contracts were renegotiated, attendance spiked in multiple markets, merchandise sales exploded, and all of that coincided with the arrival of one player who changed everything: Caitlin Clark. The rookie phenomenon who brought unprecedented attention, ticket sales, broadcast ratings, and media coverage to a league that had been struggling in obscurity for years. It is not an exaggeration to say that Caitlin Clark may have single-handedly shifted the financial trajectory of this league. And now, she is injured. She is sidelined. The one player who was the primary driver of this financial surge is no longer on the court. That has to terrify ownership. Because if the profit was dependent on one player's popularity, one player's draw, one player's ability to sell tickets and move the needle, then what happens when she is not playing? What happens if her career is shortened? What happens if the hype fades? This is why ownership is likely nervous. This is why they are not rushing to release full financial statements. This is why they are hesitant to commit to long-term salary increases and expanded revenue sharing in the next collective bargaining agreement. Because they do not know if this is sustainable. They do not know if 2026 will be profitable. They do not know if this was a one-time spike driven by hype, novelty, and one generational talent, or if it represents a genuine shift in the marketplace. And that uncertainty is now colliding head-on with player demands for more money, better contracts, and a bigger share of league revenue. The timing of this announcement is also critical. This news breaks in the middle of contentious negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement. Revenue sharing and salary structures are the primary sticking points. Players are pushing for higher baseline salaries, expanded benefits, better travel conditions, and a greater percentage of league income. Ownership is pushing back, citing years of losses, uncertain future revenue, and the need to reinvest profits into growth rather than payroll. The fact that the union is the one announcing this profit-sharing milestone suggests they are using it as leverage. They are saying, look, the league is finally making money, now pay us what we deserve. But ownership can counter by saying, we made money once, in 1 year, and we do not know if it will happen again, so we cannot commit to unsustainable salary increases based on one anomaly. Now let's add another layer. The union also announced that it will be distributing $9.25 million to players from licensing revenue generated between 2020 and 2025. This is separate from the profit sharing. This comes from group licensing deals involving jersey sales, trading cards, video games, and other merchandise. Players who were active during that period will receive payments based on years of service, with a maximum payout of $50,000 for those who played all 6 seasons. More than 250 players are expected to receive checks, including some who have retired or been released. The union previously distributed just $280,000 in licensing revenue to players who were active between 2016 and 2019, with a maximum payout of only $1,600 per player. So licensing revenue has exploded. In 2024 alone, the Players Union generated over $2.5 million from group licenses. In 2025, that number topped $10 million. So when you add the $8 million in profit sharing, the $8 million in marketing agreements, and the $9.25 million in licensing revenue, players are collectively receiving over $25 million in payments that were not part of their base salaries. That is a significant chunk of money, and it raises a very uncomfortable question for the players who have been publicly claiming they are broke, underpaid, and struggling to make ends meet. If the union is now distributing tens of millions of dollars in bonuses, profit sharing, and licensing fees, were the players really as financially desperate as they claimed? Or were they strategically painting a picture of poverty to build public sympathy and pressure ownership during negotiations? This is not to say WNBA players are overpaid. They are not. Compared to their male counterparts in the NBA, the gap is enormous. But the narrative that players are barely surviving, that they cannot afford rent, that they are forced to play overseas just to make a living, becomes harder to sustain when the union is cutting checks for tens of thousands of dollars in bonus payments on top of salaries. It suggests that while base salaries may be low, total compensation, when you factor in bonuses, licensing, endorsements, and profit sharing, is higher than the public has been led to believe. The collective bargaining agreement from 2020 set revenue-sharing targets based on 2019 revenue figures with a 20% compound increase each subsequent year. But the COVID-19 pandemic crushed revenue in 2020 and 2021, making those targets seem completely out of reach. The fact that the league not only recovered but exceeded those targets in 2025 is remarkable. But again, context matters. The league had the benefit of pent-up demand post-pandemic, a massive media push, a generational talent in Caitlin Clark, and increased investment from the NBA and corporate sponsors. Those conditions may not repeat. Here is what happens next. The union has 30 days to present a proposed payment structure to the league. Union leaders say they expect to submit that proposal within 2 weeks. The league then has 60 days to issue payment after the report is finalized. Meanwhile, negotiations for the new CBA continue. Players want guarantees. They want higher salaries. They want more revenue sharing. They want transparency. Ownership wants flexibility. They want to see sustained profitability before committing to long-term financial increases. They want to protect against future downturns. And they want to make sure that expansion fees, which brought in hundreds of millions of dollars, are not counted as operating revenue in the new agreement. The pressure is on both sides. If the union pushes too hard and ownership walks away, the league could face a lockout, a work stoppage, or even contraction. If ownership refuses to share the wealth and players feel disrespected, they could strike, go public, or take their talents overseas permanently. The stakes have never been higher. This is a league at a crossroads. One profitable year does not guarantee a profitable future. One breakout star does not guarantee sustained fan interest. One good season does not erase decades of financial struggle. So what does this all mean? It means the WNBA finally, for the first time ever, made money. But we do not know how much. We do not know if it will happen again. We do not know if ownership will reinvest it or pocket it. We do not know if players will get the raises they are demanding. And we do not know if this league, after nearly 30 years, has finally found a sustainable business model, or if this was just a flash in the pan driven by hype and one superstar. What we do know is that this announcement changes the conversation. Players can no longer claim the league is perpetually broke. Ownership can no longer hide behind decades of losses to justify low salaries. The truth is somewhere in the middle, and that truth is about to be negotiated, debated, and fought over in the most important collective bargaining process in WNBA history. If you care about women's basketball, if you care about athlete compensation, if you care about the future of professional sports, you need to be paying attention right now. Because what happens in these negotiations will determine whether the WNBA becomes a thriving, sustainable league or remains a novelty act propped up by NBA charity. This is the turning point, this is the moment, and the clock is ticking.